A few years ago, nobody knew what ISIS or ISIL was. We had heard about Al-Qaeda and other radical extremist groups, but within the last year, there's been many factors as to why ISIS actually gained control of these large territories, and their infamy became known in the West. This guy, the self-proclaimed Caliph, he was never one of the real bad boys in the terrorist community. One fellow terrorist said about him, they said, al-Baghdadi, he was insignificant. He used to lead prayer in a local mosque, but no one really noticed him. Unfortunately, this nobody kid would end up being the guy who would round up all the mujahideen, the fighters, the Islamic fighters, under his leadership. They have taken over many parts of Iraq and many parts of Syria. His name is Ibrahim Awad Ibrahim al-Badri, but he's changed his name to something way more familiar and something way more Islamic. Of all the names he could pick, he was strategic in the name he chose. Now, since ISIS is stellar in their knowledge of Islamic history, this video is going to dissect who this name historically was and why the leader of the most gruesome terror network on the earth would choose his name. Ibrahim Awad Ibrahim al-Badri changed his name to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. As we already discussed, Abu Bakr was the first caliph in history, the first leader of the Islamic world after the death of Muhammad in 632. He was the best friend of the Prophet and would have been closest to him in proximity, not to mention Abu Bakr was the father-in-law of Muhammad. You remember Aisha, our 6-year-old child bride? Well, Abu Bakr was her dad. If we get into the personality of Abu Bakr, we could know some more about what Muhammad was like by virtue of how close these two were. In fact, Bukhari tells us that Muhammad confirms that of all mankind, Abu Bakr would be Muhammad's first choice as a friend because Abu Bakr supported Muhammad with his property and with his friendship. So clearly, Abu Bakr had it right according to Muhammad. So it's no wonder that the self-proclaimed ISIS leader, the Caliph, would choose this noble name Islamically. So let's study up a little bit about who Abu Bakr was, the original Abu Bakr, the first Caliph. Abu Bakr's caliphate lasted 27 months, but in these 27 months, a great rebellion happened since the Prophet of Islam was now dead. Several Arab tribes revolted, stating that they owed no man loyalty. They only were loyal to Muhammad. But since Muhammad was now dead, they were done with Islam. Well, Abu Bakr, being an incredible dictator, he had a different idea for all of them. He started what is now called in Islamic history the Ridda Wars, or the Apostasy Wars. Basically, Abu Bakr ended up going after all the apostates and killing them. He united Arabia under the banner of Islam, and if not under the banner of Islam, he united them by campaigning against them. Since Abu Bakr's reign as the Caliph was so short-lived due to his sickness, who of all the people does now Abu Bakr pick to succeed him? It was a man by the name of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now this is where it gets really interesting, to see what they believed. We go to what is Islamically called the Pact of Umar. In this treaty, the non-Muslims were completely discriminated against. Things like building or restoring churches was now illegal. Public practices of Christian anything, prayer, recitation of the Gospels, nothing. It all became illegal. And things like ridiculous things like the Christians having to obey the Muslims, even give them space in their homes for at least 3 days. Now, if the Christians broke any of these treaties or any of these points in the treaty, then the promise of protection was immediately broken. The Muslims would then be allowed to do with the Christians and deal with them as if they were defiant and rebellious. And we know what happens when you're rebellious: death. Now, this is it's hard to swallow in a democratic Western civilization. When this is supposed to be a demonstration of equality, it's hardly anything but equality. This is the same thinking that the supreme leader of ISIS today was intentional about practicing. That's why he chose the name Abu Bakr. So we see how Muhammad acted. He then calls on Abu Bakr to lead the Muslims, who then goes on a killing campaign. And then we see how Abu Bakr's feelings and things that he said about non-believers. Abu Bakr then posts Umar ibn al-Khattab as his successor. And this is how he treated Christians. I don't know about you, but it looks a lot like the Islamic State of today. But I'll leave that up for you to decide. Because I know one thing, if it looks the same, they act the same, and they say the same things, they're even called the same things, then you and me better start paying attention. And maybe it's time to take the Islamic State seriously.